Hi, welcome to Week in Review. I'm Phil O'Connor, the Live Enterprise Director. This is where we take a look at some of the news and the headlines and some of the stories we have coming out this weekend. Joined today by our editor, Kelly Fry, to talk about a big project that we'll have. It's an ongoing project that we'll be running probably throughout the year. Kelly, tell us a little bit about State of Oklahoma and what the goal of the project is.
Well, you know, Phil, we all see these rankings that are just abysmal. Every time a new national ranking comes out, it's like Oklahoma is number 2 in, teens having babies. Oklahoma is number 1 in women incarceration. Or we're on the other end, and we rank like 48th, 49th. You just see it repeatedly over and over and over again. And so we want to dig into that and say, what's wrong? How did we get here? What can we do to move forward and try to change some of these rankings? Because it's an embarrassment, but yet people who live here, Oklahoma's filled with good-hearted people, and we're going to show some of that. We're going to show some of the people who are working really hard just to, improve the life of maybe even small groups at a time. But I just think, as a state, I think we can aim a little higher, maybe push ourselves to stand a little taller.
And one of the things we talk about in this story is the Oklahoma Standard, which is this philosophy that we have as a state of helping others in need, in times of need. Right. And so I think what we do a little bit in this project is focus on a few core areas where we really seem to be falling down, that being education,
right,
incarceration,
right,
the issues of health and mental health.
Exactly.
And so those will be some areas we'll be exploring. Talk a little bit why you think these are the important things for the state to address, and what we've talked to some state leaders and others about why people should care about this.
Everyone should care about it, and everyone shouldn't really just look to the legislature to fix it, because some of it's about things, maybe it's legislative action, but other things are about personal responsibility and personal accountability. We need to aim a little higher. We have high rates of diabetes, we have high rates of mental health, we have high rates of substance abuse, and if we care about these collectively, maybe then we can pull ourselves out of some of these problems.
Mm-hmm. And one of the other things that people have brought up too is the issue of, some people, a lot of the problem that we confront in this is that people will say, that doesn't affect me. I'm not in that situation. I'm not confronting that issue. And one of the things that the leaders are telling us and the people who are in these battles trying to correct some of these problems is that you are affected. Even if you're not directly affected, the economic factors at play, the amount of tax dollars that go into imprisoning people, those kinds of things actually do hit people. And if it doesn't hit you at a moral level, it does hit you at a pocketbook level too. And I think that's one of the issues and one of the areas that we hope to kind of explore in this.
You're absolutely right. I mean, it affects every single Oklahoman, whether it's maybe a large company looking to relocate here and bring jobs. Some of these rankings scare people off. And it's really about the underlying and the root causes of some of this. We have high rates of poverty. If we can dig into these areas one at a time and say what's driving this and what are the steps that maybe we can take to bring about some change. Because high incarceration rate, we're looking at justice reform, but high incarceration rate, it affects those children whose parents are incarcerated, who may be causing trouble in your child's classroom. So it all feeds together. We have high rates of addiction, so therefore and domestic violence, really high rates of domestic violence. And so all of that puts kids in foster care. Nobody wins there. Nobody wins. Right.
So a lot of complex problems. We're really excited about the project. Like I said, it'll be running over the next several months. We'll have various numbers of installments on that. Look for it. It's the state of Oklahoma. Kelly, thanks for joining us today. Let's move to something a little bit lighter. Well, maybe not so light. Don, folks are not happy about some of the impact of the streetcar construction, especially folks along Automobile Alley.
Right. Those of us who live and work downtown have been seeing the streetcar construction for quite some time now, and it has moved to Broadway along Automobile Alley. And we saw this issue before in Midtown as they were building over there, that some of the retailers really got hurt because people had more difficulty getting to their store or their restaurant. And we're seeing that now at Automobile Alley. And our Steve Lackmeyer is sort of crying out about it on social media and also in the paper. He had a column this week, and he even put together a meeting at Cultivar, one of the restaurants that's really suffering. I think they're down like 30 or 40% on their business as this construction's right in front of their shop. And he had some people get together there to support the place, and also to meet with some Oklahoma City Transit people from Embark. And they talked a lot about what's going on and what people want to see with the streetcar and some other things. And you know, when all this gets done, it's supposedly, and it probably will, help these retailers.
Yeah,
because
if they can survive,
right,
it's going to make them extremely valuable to be right where you can hop on and hop off.
So it's an interesting situation because these retailers, they support the streetcar. They want these cars running, you know, stopping near their place, and it makes it easier for people to get there eventually. Now, one of the things Steve pointed out is this construction on Broadway is going to be done in a month or so. And one of the things that they have promised is, you know, the Oklahoma City Marathon runs straight up Broadway, and that's going to happen. So we're pretty close on Broadway. We're not too far off from the whole system getting done. Our Bill Crum, who covers City Hall, has been writing about, you know, the streetcars are here. They're arriving one at a time, and they're being tested out, and we're seeing them on the track. So there's a lot of encouragement there, and it'll be interesting to see, you know, we've heard a lot about other cities. You know, Kansas City, their streetcars is a great success. I just saw a story about Cincinnati, not so much. They're a little discouraged about ridership. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens as they get this going in Oklahoma City.
Yeah, there's a lot going on, and it's interesting. You look at Twitter and stuff, and and again, it's that big city problem of you have a lot of people complain. It's like, I can't make the same left turn today that I was able to make yesterday. And I admit, I mean, it is a little confusing sometimes. It seems they tear up the street, it stays torn up for a while, they disappear for a while. I mean, we've seen some of that even out in front of our own place here, where the concrete will be gone for weeks at a time, but there's no one seemingly doing anything there. And I'm sure they're working as fast as they can, as smartly as they can, but I get the frustration. Yeah,
there is frustration, but we also see it getting done. I mean, I drive in along the streetcar route, and you know, over in Bricktown, they actually have the cables that are strung that are going to power the streetcar. We're seeing, you know, the cars actually being tested over by where they're going to be housed and maintained. And they had a streetcar on the street, and it went 31 miles an hour just the other day. So wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
I saw the overhead wires in Bricktown, because I was worried about the wires. I don't know why. I was worried. I just thought the visual of the wires. But I saw them in Bricktown, and I thought, that's not so bad at all. You know, it really was. It just kind of blended right in. So I was really pleased to see that.
I think it's going to be amazing.
So it's exciting.
And I think in this town, with the close together nooks of entertainment areas, especially to be able to go from Midtown to Bricktown, not have to worry about your car and stuff like that. I think that'll be a big boost.
Yeah.
So, Ryan, let's talk hoops. Some good news and some bad news.
Yeah. So after a whole lot of hand-wringing over will OU get into the tournament, will OSU get into the tournament, that all kind of played out. Of course, OU gets in as a 10 seed. Oklahoma State does not get in.
Yeah. Bad call. Bad call.
Yeah, it sure looks like it in hindsight. So OU goes.
A lot of people were saying that in foresight.
That's true. OU goes to Pittsburgh on Thursday and has a first-round game against Rhode Island. Really competitive game. It was the very first game of the tournament, so it had a lot of people fired up. It goes overtime. Unfortunately, OU comes up on the short end of it. Trae Young got his points like he always does. They just had some crucial turnovers in overtime that kind of killed him. Didn't get a whole lot of help from the supporting cast. So unfortunately their season's over, and so now the attention for OU becomes what happens to Trae Young. You've got to kind of assume that he's going to be a lottery pick, and he and his camp are saying all the right things. We're going to wait and see what happens. We're going to test the draft waters and see what we find out, where we're going to fall. You've got to assume if he's a lottery pick, he's probably going to go. And so then you're looking at next year, and OU's got some pretty talented freshmen that are coming in. Some of their young guys will be another year older, bigger, stronger. So either way, I think next year's looking a little up.
Well, here's the one that Barry raised the other day that has me pondering. Lonnie Kruger. Is Lonnie Kruger safe at Oklahoma?
Without a doubt. So you have to remember what he stepped into and what they were coming out of, which was a mess in terms of wins and losses, in terms of NCAA problems. I think for OU, for all of this FBI investigation and the NCAA investigations that are going to come as a result of that, for OU's name not to be mentioned anywhere in that has got to be a feather in Lon Kruger's cap. And everybody has always said this guy's clean, he does things the right way. So coming out of what they came out of with Jeff Capel and all the things that the program was looking at, whether it was probation, you have players getting in trouble, that hasn't been the case with Lon Kruger. So you have a year where you start the year on an incredibly high note and you're ranked as high as 4th. The bottom kind of falls out and you end up barely getting into the NCAA tournament and you lose your first round game. A lot of things played into that. You had players coming back, players get hurt. There might be some chemistry issues too. But I don't think any of that hangs on Lon Kruger, especially when you factor in all the things that they've done over the past couple of years.
Yeah, Lon Kruger is an amazing coach in a program. Would be happy to have Lon Kruger.
Yeah,
so
undoubtedly.
If he would like to come back to Kansas State, we would welcome him with open arms, the hero of Silver Lake, Kansas. So,
yeah. On the other side of it, Oklahoma State does not get into the NCAA tournament, which was a bummer. But they did get it into the NIT. And which means you get to host a couple of games, especially for a team that's a high seed in the NIT. You get to host at least 1 or 2 games, which was the case for them. So they hosted the other night Florida Gulf Coast University, Dunk U. I don't remember, a couple of years ago in the NCAA tournament, they became everybody's darling for their high-flying dunks, and actually a guy that has some Oklahoma ties, Andy Enfield, was their coach then. Anyway, so they played Florida Gulf Coast in Stillwater this week, won that game pretty handily, and looked good doing it. So again, more fuel to the fire of whether or not they should have gotten into the NCAA tournament.
of course, they're playing with those weird rules.
Yeah, so the NIT has become kind of a testing ground for rule changes in the NCAA. So, of course, college basketball is halves. NIT is using quarters.
I don't think that's the one that would bother me.
They backed the three-point line up.
That would bother me.
Which was interesting because it looked like it took OSU a good quarter, which is strange to say in college basketball, to kind of get their feet set where they were supposed to be to shoot three-pointers.
Yeah, you play all year under these certain rules, and now you're going to move the lines that you have just lived your whole life, become accustomed to.
And they did the same thing with the lane. So on free throws, they were actually about 3/4 of a foot further out than what they normally are. It's kind of a weird mix of NBA, international rules, things like that, just stuff that they're testing. And NIT's always been like that. They've always used that tournament as a testing ground for the next season. So.
Next, they're going to start somebody on second base, but go on.
So now, anyway, Oklahoma State won their game. They play next Monday. They get to host Stanford, which is an interesting deal because OSU's on spring break. You're in the NIT, so people are let down just a little bit, so they're a little concerned about attendance. They came out yesterday and said that students get in free. So as many students want to show up to that game and get in, they can. It should be a great game. Stanford is another team that was right on the NCAA bubble, another highly ranked team in the NIT bracket, so it should be pretty fun.
Yeah. This is where we get to the best part of the show, right, Don?
We're almost done, right?
We're almost done.
Yeah,
this is where we talk about my Wildcats, Kelly. They play today at 5:50, so I'll be leaving today about 5:30 to get home in time to watch that.
So you're staying late today, huh, Phil?
Yeah, I am. I am. The worst thing about the NCAA tournament is the finality of it, which I'm sure OU fans are feeling. And I just wonder what's worse is to, not make the tournament and that feeling for OSU fans, or what inevitably happens is you get the one game and you get, it's over.
I think if you asked OSU fans, they would have much rather made the tournament.
Yeah, I think you're right. All right, well, that's it. Be sure to check out the story this Sunday. That's the kickoff of the series, and we're really excited about it. We'll see you next week.